Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I hope you enjoyed last week's content with our full-length and condensed versions of the interview with Brianna Urbina, a woman currently running for Congress against House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer in the 5th District. This week, we're bringing you the other half of that coverage with Mckayla Wilkes, another woman running for Congress against Steny Hoyer. If you like these kind of videos, feel free to let us know in the comments, as well as give any other advice or suggestions for people to interview. We also made this video in collaboration with the Metro DC Democratic Socialists of America. Hope you enjoy, and as always, don't forget to like and subscribe. Hello everyone, my name is Adam Stromby, and I'm a member of the Publications Editorial Board of the Washington Socialist. The Washington Socialist is the official periodical of the Democratic Socialists of America, based out of Washington, D.C. Today we're talking with Mckayla Wilkes, a congressional candidate running for Maryland's 5th District, currently occupied by House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer. Mckayla, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
So I'd like to begin with a background and a few personal questions before we dive into the details of the campaign and your platform, and then we'll close on some of the pragmatics. So first question, where are you from?
I'm from Charles County in Waldorf. I grew up in Suitland maybe until I was about 9 or 10, and we ended up moving to Waldorf, Maryland.
And what is your professional background?
My professional background, so I started out working part-time jobs, minimum wage jobs, like McDonald's, Starbucks, Finish Line, to name a few. Most recently, I am an administrative assistant. I do work for the Department of Defense, but I hope that does not conflict with my progressiveness. But that's one of the reasons why I'm running, so that people do not have to depend on these kinds of industry jobs, and they can work other jobs and not have to depend on these to make a living.
Thank you. And the last question is, I just want to delve a little bit more into that last little bit, which is,
Yes.
Why are you running for office? What's the full story there?
So I'm running for office because I have had so many life experiences dealing with these policies and seeing how there are people who are left out of the conversation in the halls of Congress. I feel like for the past 40 years almost, we have been represented by someone who does not favor our interests, but rather corporate interests. And that's just something that we don't need. I feel like right now we need someone who's going to speak for us, and we need someone who can resonate with voters.
So let's get into the issues. The first issue I want to talk about is criminal justice reform. Going over your background, it's quite clear that this is a very important topic for you. In your About page, in fact, you describe yourself as someone who, quote, witnessed firsthand how our criminal justice system fails to support and rehabilitate troubled youth. Tell us more about that. What do you see as the main challenges for criminal justice reform in the 5th District, and how would you help address them?
What I see as challenges are basically criminalizing people who are impoverished and criminalizing people who life just happens to them, period. If you look at my life story, I was jailed for driving on suspended license for non-payment of tickets. I had no idea that you could go to jail for driving on a suspended license until I was threatened with it and until I was incarcerated for it. And when I say that they criminalize poverty, it's because at the time when I was jailed for driving on suspended license, I had tickets, I couldn't afford to pay them, and when I went to court, I told the judge, he asked, well, why didn't you pay the tickets, such and such, and I explained to him, I really wasn't working all that at the time. At that time, I was working like maybe temp jobs here and there, but when I expressed to him that I just simply could not afford to pay, his answer was, well, okay, I'll give you an option. You can pay $1,000 in fines, get 13 points on your license, which is a revocation of your license automatically, or you can do 2 nights in jail. And at the time, I was 2 months pregnant, and I felt like he played on me not having the money to pay. If I told you I couldn't pay traffic tickets, how would I be able to pay $1,000 in fines within 10 days, as a matter of fact, to include that? So it's just things like this that goes on, and it happens all too frequently. People who are jailed for marijuana charges, who are left in prison for months, sometimes a year or so, until their trial date comes up, all because they have a $150 bail or a $300 bail. These are issues. You have people who are incarcerated who phone calls can sometimes range $20 for maybe like a 5-minute phone call. And so when you're sitting in jail, if you can't even afford bail, how are you going to afford $20 for a 5-minute phone call?
Mm.
I mean, these are just things that shouldn't be happening. We should not be incarcerated based on our wealth and who can afford to stay out of prison and who can't.
Mm. Some advocates of criminal justice reform who are opposed to the policies that you're talking about have pointed to recent legislation like the Justice Reinvestment Act, passed by the Maryland State Legislature in 2016 as a promising step forward. Like your own platform, it emphasizes things like community investment, drug treatment, and a general scaling down of the prison population. Thanks to, many advocates point out, to policies like that, Maryland, at the state level at least, as distinct from the federal level, currently leads the nation in reduction of incarceration rates. Do you see success stories like this as a vindication of your approach? And if so, how would you go beyond these kinds of initiatives at the federal level?
So at the federal level, I would just make sure that it is mandated to, as you hit on, substance abuse and things like that, mental health issues as well. I would make sure that it's mandated that such instances that have to do with mental health and substance abuse issues, that we evaluate them, and instead of incarcerating them, get them treatment. I do see steps forward like that as a positive, outlook, and something that may have perspective onto why I'm moving the way that I am towards the criminal justice reform. But on the federal level, I think that it needs to be mandated so these things can be controlled. But that also goes into big pharma and prescription pills and the legalization of marijuana and psychotics, because these prescription medications contribute to substance abuse and opioid uses, which in my district, opioid use is a crisis at the moment.
Do you want to talk about that a little bit further, the scale of the problem of the use of opioids in the 5th District?
Sure. So in my district, opioid use is very prevalent in my district. I can't tell you how many people I've been to high school with who have died and overdosed. Maybe about last month, about 5 people that I went to high school with died from opioid use. Most of them were punished with jail time rather than rehabilitation. And then also you have the issues in my district where people don't want rehab centers in their neighborhoods.
Right.
So then you have that to go into play. But if we have something written on a federal level that can mandate these practices to not be that way and to be more effective and help these people instead of ostracizing them, then we can move somewhere productively in criminal justice reform.
Your criminal justice platform has 2 components, aside from the general focus upon rehabilitation and community investment, that struck me as unique, and you were actually just beginning to talk about them before. Prohibiting the use of predatory prison phone rates and, quote, ending the exploitation of prison work and modern-day slavery by expanding the federal minimum wage to those who are incarcerated. Can you explain to voters the background on these issues and why you included that in your platform?
Yes, absolutely. If you look at our 13th Amendment, which abolishes slavery, there is an exception to that. And the exception to that is if a person commits a crime and they are charged with it and they're guilty or what have you. So, but irregardless, if you're in prison, there's an exception to slavery, which goes on to the minimum wage and how people who are incarcerated are working for sometimes pennies on the hour, barely being, and those pennies don't even add up to a $20 phone call.
Like literal pennies per hour for
Yes.
somebody to be formally employed by the state.
Yes, literally. And I feel as though if these people are going to be working in prison for the hours they do, they work 8-hour days just like the rest of us. There's no reason why they should be getting 15 cents an hour. Like I said, that's not even enough to cover a phone call. So these are things that are definitely an issue. And these are why prison workers are being exploited instead of rehabilitated. If you take someone who has mental health issues or a substance abuse issue, say someone is addicted to heroin or addicted to crack and cocaine, if you put them in prison for a year or 2, you're not addressing the problem. They don't get to take the steps toward fixing their problem and getting the treatment that they need. When they get out, most of them some of the time overdose because they get out and they get trigger happy and they just want to get high, and that's very dangerous, and this is why they need treatments. I mean, in some areas in the district, you can get out of jail the same day and go to the next corner and get high. I mean, that's how serious it is, and that's why they need treatment.
They're not addressing the root
Yes.
of the issue. And another topic, perhaps this can be our segue into something that you really seem keen to tackle the root of it, the problem, is affordable housing.
Yes.
The 5th District has a serious shortage of affordable housing. Your platform stresses the historic exclusion of African Americans from federal housing assistance.
Yes.
Luckily for residents of the 5th District, it also has a very aggressive plan to combat that.
Yes.
You propose the construction of 7 million housing units over the next decade. Why is this for the lay reader, and what are the details of that proposal for maybe those who are more aware of the scale of the crisis?
So the details of that is to create 7 million properties for those to live at that are affordable for them. And it will be a percentage for people who live on and below the poverty line. And how we're going to pay for that, which I know a lot of people ask, is that the 1% are not paying their fair share of taxes. If we tax them adequately the way that they're supposed to be, we can fund these programs. And if you look at how much money we give to our defense program, to our defense industry, we can fund these programs. The United States gives more money than the next 12 countries to our defense industry. And that was in 2016. And last year in 2018, we gave $80 billion more than that. So we can do this, it can be funded. And actually, since we're talking about this, I guess I can talk about this on this platform. We're actually coming up with a new policy that we're thinking of called universal housing. We haven't came up with a catchy name for it yet, but it doesn't mean that everyone gets Section 8 vouchers, but it just means that everyone who is eligible for them gets them. Because right now, the problem is not the giving of the vouchers. The problem isn't eligibility. The problem is not giving them out to people, and wait times are 10, 20 years long. I have friends that have been on the waiting list for 15 years.
For affordable housing.
For affordable housing and for Section 8 vouchers that will contribute to affordable living as well. And that's a big issue because about 80% of the people who are applying for vouchers and who are eligible for them are not able to get them. So 1 in 4 people only get vouchers. So that's only about 20%. And this will initially end homelessness if we do it the correct way. But affordable housing is very important to me. I mean, I have friends who work 8 hours a day, sometimes 12 hours a day, and still cannot afford to live on their own. So that is just something that needs to change.
And again, you feel very passionate about it.
Yes.
You're also keen to get into the details. One of the particular prescriptions you gave that I was impressed by was you proposed to, quote, provide federal assistance through the Housing Trust Fund and Capital Magnate Fund for states to construct 3 million new units of housing for extremely low-income individual households. How does that work, and why 3 million? Was there specific logic to the number, or was it just to complement the wider federal program that you were also proposing?
So it was just to complement the wider federal program that we were proposing because a certain amount of units need to be allocated to the people who are specifically impoverished, because those are the people who are left out. When you look at affordable housing, and most of the affordable housing out here goes by like your income and of how big your household is and how much money you make a year. But what about people who don't make anything a year? You know, what about those people? You have people that are on SSI or disability. They get Social Security checks each month, and their checks are only about $700, if that. You know,
Right.
They don't fall into that scale.
Right.
And that's why we have to widen that aspect and create those 3 million units for that specific group.
Speaking of covering our most vulnerable universally, Medicare for all. Your platform calls for politicians to, quote, stop playing games with the American people when it comes to access to healthcare. It seems the American people want the game to end as well. A plurality of voters, in fact, on both sides of the aisle gave healthcare as the single most important reason for turning out in the 2018 midterms. Tellingly, the 2018 midterms, partly in response to Trump and partly in response to GOP threats to cut access through programs like the ACA, also saw presidential election cycle levels of turnout. What is your plan for getting America to Medicare for all, And what challenges do you expect getting there?
My plan to get American Medicare for all is to abolish private insurance agencies. I feel like that needs to happen. I mean, they're never going to lower their prices. All they're going to do is just keep on exploiting the sick and the unhealthy. This needs to happen. It's imperative. People are dying. 123 people die each day for not having insurance, and that doesn't even account for those who are underinsured. I feel like this needs to happen quickly, and it needs to happen efficiently. And I know a lot of politicians that aren't in favor of it say, well, how are we going to pay for it? Well, this is something new. We have to figure out how to do this. We're already paying for it. Medicare already exists. It's just the fact of getting everyone on the same plan, getting everyone to pay for it. And it's not like you're going to pay hundreds of extras of dollars. It's a couple of extra dollars on your paycheck. If you look on your paycheck and you look at the taxes that are taken out, what do you see? Medicare. It's right there. We're already paying for it. So it's not hard. It's simple. Everyone in, no one out. No co-pays, no premiums, no deductibles, a cap on prescription drugs at $200 no matter what it is. Everyone can get preventative care, continuous care. Emergency rooms will not be overused anymore, and people will have a longer life expectancy.
It's interesting you note that. I just wanted to pause. There was a report that came out from the Journal of the American Medical Association just a few months back that found that we're already spending more than twice as much as any comparable developed nation, all of whom have some form of universal access to healthcare. But it's only, it seems, when you put it in the language of taxes that people feel this kind of indignation. But even then, I think we could both agree the game seems to be kind of up for a lot of people.
Yes.
But one man who would like the game to continue is Steny Hoyer. Hoyer does not support Medicare for all and has received a great deal of flack for this from yourself and the wider community. Why do you think it is that he won't commit to what the American people, want on the issue?
One word: donors.
Okay, that's that. On to the next topic.
Yes.
A Green New Deal. Your campaign calls for, quote, transformational action and describes climate change as an existential threat.
Yes.
But a lot of what you find on the Green New Deal is that the devil can be in the details, so I want to get it straight from the source. What is your philosophy when it comes to the Green New Deal? What is it aiming to tackle for you, and how?
So for me, the Green New Deal is tackling our safety, for one, our life. And for me, the Green New Deal is transferring over to renewable energy over the course of 10 years. We have 11 years, as you all know. And Maryland is on the coast. And we have to tackle coastal resilience as well, because that's important, because we need to be able to bounce back and we need to prepare ourselves for the effect of climate change. And I don't even want to call it climate change, it's a climate crisis. And the gist of it is, when it happens, when this world becomes inhabitable, we are the ones who are going to suffer, because we are the working class. The 1%, they're going to go live in their bubbles or whatever, you know what I'm saying? And we're going to be out here, not them. And it's not even going to be us, it's going to be our children, our children's children, and their grandchildren. So for me, it's all about, saving this planet, making it habitable for all of us. We can't reverse the damage that's already been done, but we can fix it. And with the Green New Deal will come clean jobs. I had people ask me, well, what are you going to do about all of the jobs that are going to be lost? Well, they're going to get clean jobs. And so that's something that we'll work towards. So in the end, everyone will win. And then also, you cannot talk about climate change without talking about environmental racism and residential segregation. Because when you look at the effects of climate change and you look at the amount of carbon emissions that are being released into our air and the pollution, like if you look over in the indigenous communities, and they're building pipelines and incinerators in their areas, but it's not benefiting them. It's benefiting Caucasians and people who live in wealthy areas 20 or so miles away from them. Just in my district, in District 5, just like about 20 minutes from my house, they're building 5 power plants in Brandywine, Maryland, which has a population of about 7,000 people. 72% of those people are Black. And Brandywine, Maryland is very small. This is something that has to be talked about as well when we talk about climate change, because the people who contribute to it the least are affected the most. And this is something that has to be talked about when we speak about the Green New Deal.
The Green New Deal is meant to be a challenge to the status quo, and again, your campaign also comes with a strident challenge to Steny Hoyer, stating, quote, "Powerful officials like Steny Hoyer attempt to put a brake on aggressive climate efforts needed to these individuals, you say, need to get out of the way." Can you explain more about what you find Hoyer's failures on the issue of the climate have been?
He's not been vocal. He does not support the Green New Deal. He does not take it seriously. He's on Twitter every day. Oh, we support this. We want to, he came up with some bill for flood resistance, but that's handling things after the fact. We need to handle it so that we don't get to that point, because Maryland is on the coast. We're going to face the threat of rising waters, and we're already facing it right now with flash flooding. At least I know where I live. There's flash floods every single time it rains. So these are things that he's not been forward on. And then, like I said earlier, you asked me why didn't I think he would support Medicare for all. I don't think he would support the Green New Deal because his top contributor is Exelon Energy. So these are things that we have to speak about. When you see these policies that he does not support, and this isn't just for Steny, for anyone who's watching, your elected official, you can go on the FEC website and that information is public. Look at their donors and that'll tell you exactly who they're working for. You won't even have to ask why they're not supporting these policies that'll help you.
I can even make a pitch on that front because it's a pastime of mine as well. If you browse the internet plenty, I believe it's on Chrome, it's on Firefox, and a few others, there's an app you can download that's called Greenhouse. It's a free extension, and it plugs into that database, and it will highlight politicians' names when it sees them in articles, and it will give you a kind of short breakdown, and you can follow it for the details and stuff like that. So I think what we're learning right away is, if you're interested in why we're seeing inaction as well as action, looking at the background of politicians' portfolios is a really interesting place to start. And we're starting perfectly yet again to get into the pragmatics of your campaign. You are running in a highly Democratic district, but against one of the most powerful Democrats in the country. To the layperson, the idea of running a primary against a powerful, basically center-right Democrat harkens most recently to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's recent upset of Joe Crowley in New York. But unlike Joe Crowley, Steny Hoyer has seen off multiple challengers from the left, most recently in 2016. The last challenger to face Steny, Dennis Fritz, polled just under 16% of the vote. My question is very simple. What makes you different?
I think that what makes me different is that I resonate with the voters, and I'm out here pushing hard. I'm not taking anything, I'm sorry. What makes me different is that I resonate with the voters. I resonate with the constituents. I've lived the life of the majority of the people in this district. And when you say, look at how Dennis Fritz pulled in 16% of the vote. He did that with no platform, because to him, his platform was the people. And even so, he got that much percentage of the votes. Just think about what we can do with someone who has a platform like mine, someone who resonates with the voters like mine. If that doesn't show that Maryland is ready for a change, that they would give someone without a platform 16% of the vote, I don't know what is.
It's an interesting point. In fact, there's actually been others as well who've seen it. As you well know, there is another primary challenger in the race against Steny Hoyer, Brianna Urbina, who we've had a chance to sit down with as well. Have you contacted the Urbina campaign? What is your strategy in what promises to be a pretty intense, and I'm sure all 5th District residents would concede, a very welcome challenge for a Democratic primary?
So I haven't reached out to her. I've met her a couple of times, but I will say that it's nice to have another woman of color running for office, because it gives us choices. We've never had this many choices before. So I think that this is great, and I think if anything, we're making Steny work for his position.
Sounds like the essence of democracy to me. In terms of undemocratic strategies, however, recently the DCCC issued a blanket ban on hiring any campaign staff that primary Democrats, even, or some might say, especially if those challengers come from the left. Has this affected your campaign, and what do you make of the move more generally?
Actually, in the beginning of our campaign, we were sourcing for a videographer to film our campaign ads, and we were calling, and we actually got someone to volunteer who worked for a media outlet. I won't release the name of the outlet, but he was told at the very last minute that he was not allowed to help on any other political activities outside of work. For that very reason. So we actually had to end up having someone who doesn't usually do political work film our campaign videos. And also recently, we have been trying to source for a treasurer for our campaign. We reached out to consulting firms, and we were told time and time again that they were at capacity. But of course we knew.
Yeah.
You're not at capacity, but I mean, we found our way. But I will say, I don't think that it's that detrimental for this campaign because, in a sense, this is more than a local race. This is a national race. I mean, Steny Hoyer, he is a leader in the House of Representatives. So this is something that everyone's looking at. But for me, I think that it would hurt the lesser known primary challengers. The other primary challengers challenging lesser known incumbents. I feel like it would impact them more than it would do myself.
Right. The move more generally, do you see it as the DCCC, seeing the kind of writing on the wall here? Are they beginning to clam up? Thoughts more generally?
I think that the DNC saw what happened last year and they're scared. They're terrified because they know that the progressive movement is here and we're here to stay and we're coming hard. And they see how AOC is doing, how AOC is killing it in Congress. Not only AOC, but Ayanna Pressley, Ilhan Omar, Rashida, Rokana, and they see what's going on and they're upset with that. They don't want their incumbents, having to explain anything to their donors. So, that's where we come in. We're grassroots energy. But this is what grassroots is about. I mean, I love grassroots. It's like everyone is involved. It's not even like I'm running by myself. It's like I have a whole army behind me. So the DNC, the DCCC, they can bring it on, but we're ready.
Well, I trust you've got your army ready. You certainly seem energized. But just by virtue of the format, there's going to be plenty in and about your campaign that we just don't have time to cover. So just for the sake of fairness and giving adequate space, I wanted to leave the last bit open and close by asking, is there anything you want to tell voters that we have not previously covered, or is there anything else that you want them to know about yourself or your campaign?
So I would like to touch on one thing. I would like to say that if you are upset with how the way things are going in your district, if you are upset about things that are going on in your life, if you're mad as hell because you feel like the government is not working for you and it's supposed to, I encourage you to run, because that's what I'm doing. I'm running because it's too late to try to wait our term. Our time is now. Be the change that you want to see. And if you don't want to run for whatever reason, if you have a progressive challenger that is running in your district against an incumbent that is horrible, that looks out for corporate interests, vote for them. Learn about their platform. Get involved, because this is an opportunity, especially for anyone who's in Maryland's 5th District. This is our opportunity right here, right now. We have already wasted 38 years on someone who does not care about us. They don't care about people like us. We are dying. We are sleeping on the streets. We are working 2 or 3 jobs trying to maintain and can't afford a place to live. We are struggling. We're struggling, and our representation is literally gambling with our lives. Don't miss out on this opportunity. And for anyone in the 5th District who wants to get involved with my campaign, please go to my website, www.Mckayla2020.com, and you can sign up, volunteer, whatever you like to do, even if you just have a question to ask, you just want to chat about something. And if you look at my platform and see that there's anything that I'm missing or anything that you feel like should be included, please let me know, because I honestly care about the people, and that is the genuine reason why I'm running, so you guys should definitely be involved.
Thank you so much for being with us, Mckayla. With the Washington Socialist, I'm Adam Strummy. Thank you so much for being with us. Hey guys, hope you like our video. If you're more interested in all of the contenders in the Maryland 5th race, check out our interview with Brianna Urbina, another candidate challenging Steny Hoyer from the left. Hope you'll like it, and as always, don't forget to like and subscribe.